What is going on, Comic Fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creator Joe Corallo. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Yes, thanks for having me back.
Dude, it's always been so much fun to talk comics with you. We don't always get to do it on this show, but we do it a lot over at Pop Culture Philosophers, and now we're
Yeah.
here talking about your comics. So, if people haven't gotten to know you before or haven't checked out previous interviews, kind of how did you get into comics? Did you always have a love for comics growing up, or did that kind of come later in life?
Yeah, no, sure. I'll dive in real quick. I really got into comics. I was in like third grade, and I was at my friend Brian's birthday party, and he was giving out like little favors to people. I was into Mega Man. He gave me some like little Mega Man figurines. This is like 1993. I know people are like, "But Joe, you look so young," and it's like, "No, I'm sorry." But one of the other guests at the party got Sonic the Hedgehog comic books, and I loved Sonic the Hedgehog as a kid as well. I was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute! Like they keep tell there's more story, and I can just read it, and that got me into comics, like not just picking those up, but like I got my first one at like a Kmart, and then there was a convenience store in town I would walk to. I got the mailed subscription home. I'd drag my poor parents to different comic shops. I grew up on Long Island, so there were a few, but you'd have to drive to them. So there's like six or so within like a half hour or so driving distance. So, have my parents go. So I was like collecting back issues. Like it really gave me the whole layout for how it worked. And then when I was in high school, I got into like Ultimate Spider-Man and Runaways, and was starting to read some of the more basic kind of DC stuff, like your Dark Knight Returns and your Watchmen and all that. And then I got more into like Vertigo and things like that in like college. And right out of college, I was getting into like Walking Dead. James Robinson's Starman run was being collected in hardcovers, and I read Kingdom Come, Long Halloween, some other stuff like that after right after college, and yeah, just kept going.
Yeah. Where was it then for you, this switch of something that you grew up loving and consuming as a kid and, throughout college to say, I want to start to create comics?
Yeah, no, that same friend of mine, Brian, we used to do sort of Sonic Mega Man like fan fiction kind of stuff in like this is like fifth, sixth grade, and all that like around third, and then just sort of kept going, and I quickly figured out I couldn't draw, but I did like telling stories. So that's really where that happened, and then I took creative writing courses in like high school and college. I had some friends of mine in college that wanted to do a sort of like cartoon pitch, that at the time, the title I had for that was Masters of the University, which you couldn't really do. It was like, well, we can't really do it, but it's a really good title. And yeah, really playing up some of that stuff. And that fizzled out, but I was sort of like, but I still like want to do stuff. So, I really pushed, I really wanted to do something in the comic medium. And around like 2010, I found an artist who was really taking that more seriously and just sort of kept at it. Self-published a few issues of the Uncanny Undergrads, and did that like 2011. 2012 is when I got with Danny Luckert, who does a lot of stuff with like Jeremy Hahn and Corinna Becca over at Boom. Colin Bunn, he does a lot of stuff with Colin Bunn now, but like we did like a sort of cyberpunk, uh, Blade Runner-esque kind of thing about these like model androids who like sort of uh their first goal was to destroy the previous model after they were put out there. And I had a lot of fun with that. It'd be something I'd love to revisit at one point or another, but yeah, and just kept plodding along. Got my first anthology like 2015, published my first anthology 2017. Edited my first miniseries 2018, wrote my first miniseries 2019, etc.
Yeah. So, and a long time in the game of working on comics and creating stuff. And one of the things that, that you have done recently is this anthology that you are an editor for of Crisis on Our Only Earth,
Yes.
from a way blue world.
Yep.
And
Way of the World. Mhm.
where did this kind of like idea for you to come up of like, let's work on this anthology, the Crisis on Our Only Earth, and kind of go from there?
Yeah, so Molly Jackson, who I co-edited it with, we did the Mine anthology to benefit Planned Parenthood back in 2017. Came out like the very end of 2017. And we got to work with some incredible talent, some of which were also in Crisis on Our Only Earth, like Trina Robbins, who has since passed, but we worked with like Mindy Newell and Eric Palicki, Emily Pearson, um, a number of people who were in both, Liana Kangas. But it sort of started with that. Molly and I had done that anthology, and then a little bit, a couple of years or so after that, we were like, oh, we should do another one sometime. And we had started laying the groundwork for this like right before the pandemic, and then things got a little crazy for quite a number of people, if you
Yeah.
remember. And so it delayed it quite a bit because then you were dealing with issues like, well, it's a benefit, so this is a for money. Like I'm not making any money off this. I didn't make any money off the Planned Parenthood anthology. So people are dedicating and donating their time. So so this sort of stuff goes on the back burner for a bit, and then people get things in when they can, and then we were more or less ready to go right when the diamond stuff went down at the beginning of the year. So that we delayed that further. Like the idea was to have something out, like even physically for Earth Day this year, but again, like those obstacles just made it not feasible. So we were able to figure out a schedule get out a digital release, which is out now, and hopefully a limited physical release next year. But the important thing for us was to get the book out in some form or fashion. Obviously, with an environmental anthology, you want to take the physical release a bit more with a bit more scrutiny than you
Mm.
might otherwise. So there needs to be a bit more thought going into that. So we have to take our time on that one.
Yeah. So what was obviously you've done the anthologies before. Do you gravitate towards the role of doing the editor aspect or writing? Like, which one do you like them both, or do you have a preference?
I like them both. I mean, I certainly love writing. Editing, I think, comes more from my love of the medium and wanting to be involved in putting comics out there. Um, and, getting to work with a lot of people and putting something together. Obviously, the My Anthology was big for me. I got to work with a lot of great people. I got to work with like Mark Wade and Gail Simone and Wheezy and Denny O'Neil and a lot of legends and same thing here uh, with this anthology. And to just do something that feels like it has some more weight and meaning to it beyond sort of the creative pursuit, which is also great, and that's the main reason why I do all this sort of stuff. Because Eric Palicki and I also edited a couple of music themed horror anthologies, Deadbeats, and got to work with great people there, and that was sort of fun in a different way. And yeah, I love editing. I love helping make different projects, putting things out there. I've gotten to edit for Dynamite on a few occasions and should be again at some point, but getting to, sort of have my hands involved with uh, these sort of legacy characters and these, characters going, switching back to the golden age, like Green Hornet, Miss Fury, Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, and stuff over there is phenomenal. But but yeah, I definitely feel like I'm more of a writer, and my passion for comics helps with the editing.
So when you have an anthology like this, and
Mhm.
obviously you said, you know, the past anthology, you brought back some people that you had onto it, the original one, and that's how you got them back on this one. Is there is there a process for you of like, do you kind of do an open call to a degree, or how do you go about like figuring out who you want to invite to be a part of an anthology?
Now, people do this sort of differently,
Yeah.
but here, we sort of knew who we wanted to work with, and we kept it, uh, we kept it close. We had internal discussions, then reached out to people, and if people
Okay.
weren't available, you'd reach out to other people. There are people that do open submissions. I don't fault them for that. There's it's very time consuming.
Mhm.
So like I do warn people if you want to edit an anthology and you want to be kind and you want to open your door to that, that's great. But you'll also notice the people who do open submissions tend to put posts out on social media of like, day three grinding through 800 entries or this and that, and it's like it's a lot,
Yeah.
and there is also an element of if if you do that, there's a lot of things that are outside of your control. Like you've now gone for you are going to reject more people than not.
Hmm.
You are now going from people having a sort of benign take on you or not thinking of you one way or the other to now the only interaction they have with you is you more or less telling them you're not good enough for this book. So you get people from sort of having a neutral take on you to a negative take. And sometimes that's in like the hundreds. And that's fine. Just be aware that, like those are just sort of things to
Yeah.
consider. And I mean, people should be more mature than that. And the vast majority of them are. But,
But we still
you,
live in the
you know,
world.
yeah, but you still live in a world where, there will be people like, oh, damn it, they just didn't like me. They're just trying to like put all they just want to work with their friends. They're doing that. So like you do have to do the work and reach out to people either you don't know or want to give a shot to, and like there's a lot that goes into it. But it's rewarding, it's exciting. I do love the good that comes with it. The bad is always, it's stressful, especially with an anthology. You deal with, okay, well, if two stories are late, like at what point do we cut the stories? What point, are we going to delay this book that 90% of people got everything in on, and then sometimes it's because you're sort of a lower priority for the creator. Sometimes you're working with that many people, you're increasing the chance of someone having a medical emergency, a family emergency, this or that, and then you're kind of in a tough position of, am I really going to penalize this person who's going through a lot by not publishing their stuff?
Right.
And so there's a lot to consider. That's why you really need to, for anyone who wants to do an anthology, it's like you really have to put in that sort of time and like try to create
Yeah.
enough of a buffer that, okay, if something happens that's out of people's control, I can still get all the stories in and still, put out the book I want to put out.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier too about like the importance of, you know, the topic, this nature of this
Mhm.
anthology. And is there something like that you hope people like pick up that they would take away from this, like, and what's that hope for, you know, a reader of this comic?
Yeah, I mean, with Crisis for Only Earth, uh, which does benefit environmental causes, specifically the NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, or Natural Resources Defense Council. Sorry, it's what we're looking for here is to get people not just acknowledging, that there are issues with the environment. And I think anyone who's picking this up already is.
Right.
I don't think we're reaching people who would condemn the Lorax, for example. But with something like this, it's important to see that other people care about these things. I think that's something anthologies like this can do. I think helping to put things in perspective, giving people the idea of, you're not doing everything on your own. It's about little steps, things like that. If doing a little better and more people doing a little better, saves a few lives, extends the habitable existence of Earth by a few years. Like, isn't that worth it? That sort of thing. So, I think hope and optimism and all of that. While also there's certainly stories that go into sort of the darker elements of things and what could potentially happen, which is also important. It's important to sort of keep these things in mind, make it entertaining, but there are consequences to our actions.
Yeah.
But overall, more for hope and wanting things to get better.
Yeah, there's a vast variety of stories in this. They're all like, two, 3 pages at most. And the
Yeah,
very first one you that is in the anthology is a very dark and kind of bleak one. You're like, oh, but then there's moments too of like I think Sin of Grace is their one where it's like, oh, I'm trying to do my best, and like, oh, what about this? You're still, and just trying to do your part in any way and
yeah.
things like that. So how do you kind of figure out as an editor balancing how much of the reality of where we're at, right, on an anthology like this, of like, this is our this is the place and this is the world we live in, and then balance it with that hope that you're talking about, the encouragement to say, hey, let's try and make a difference.
Yeah, no, a lot of that goes into not just, when you're curating an anthology, you're reaching out to people and putting things together in a way that you're keeping those things in mind.
Mhm.
Somali and I would go over that, see who we're talking to, see the kind of stories that are being pitched, and then kind of work around that. So that was important to us. Giving suggestions here and there if people needed them. And then on top of that, the other important thing is the story layout. Like what are the stories overall through this? Like, what order are they going to go in? And that also takes time and consideration. And we also worked with Tyler, the publisher or co-publisher at Away Blue World on this. So even if maybe stories skew slightly one way or the other, like maybe it's like 60-40 hope or 60-40 despair, if you lay them out in a certain way and you show the reader how you want them to take it, you can kind of finagle it a bit to make it more optimistic.
I love just kind of getting to see the behind the scenes of the anthology.
Mhm.
I also want to talk about some of your other stuff here while I have you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so, is there anything? First off, where can people get this ebook if they want to? Because I know you can get it digitally right now.
Yeah, you can get it digitally. It's on Global Comics. You can get it there, as well as the Away Blue World website. You can order it directly there. I believe if you do that, they'll get pinged and then send you, the PDF file of that. But yeah, it's got an incredible jam cover by Liana Kangas and Summit Easley, which is just wild to me.
So good.
Having Mindy Newell and John K. Snyder III do a story together. Mindy was the first woman to have a run on Wonder Woman. She got to co-write with George Perez, and uh, she's just incredible. She's a nurse in her civilian life outside of comics. But and again, Drina Robbins. I mean, there's a great story by Stuart Moore and Mark Wheatley in here as well. My buddy Eric Balicki, uh, got to do so. David Pepos and Chris Sheehan do a great story. I got to do a fun pinup. But yeah, there's a lot in here. I think there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of things to make you think.
Mhm.
And I hope people check it out. And yeah, whether you check it out through Global Comics or Away Blue World directly, we thank you.
So let's take off the editor hat for a little bit and
Hmm.
let's go into the writing modal. You recently had a
Sure.
comic out, Sync to the Top. Um,
Yeah, it just we just funded that on Kickstarter. The As of recording this, the backers will be getting their survey shortly, the next day or two. We're just finalizing, the interior front and back covers and things like that. And then we'll send out that survey, get these PDFs out. So we're really looking forward to that. So, hopefully by the end of the week, next week, people will be getting those as of this recording. I am incredibly proud of, Sync to the Top. And, we will make it available at least, digitally, in the coming months. Yeah, I do want to make sure that the backers get it first
mhm.
and that they're able to, have a bit of time with it before, it goes out there to everyone else. I'll have extra copies to sell at shows as well as Chase Bluestone. We're hoping to do like the Brooklyn Indie Showcase in like April and sell it there, which would be a lot of fun too. But yeah, it's a dark story, but it's the kind of it's a one and done story, and it's the kind of story that's difficult to get picked up
Mhm.
by a publisher. It's a mature story and it's a one shot and it's creator owned. It's like three strikes against you going anywhere when you're shopping this around. Most publishers that do one shots, they're either IP
Mhm.
or it's a uh, well-known IP. I should say this is obviously intellectual property, but you know what I
Right.
mean.
Yeah.
And it's that, or you are in that like top 1% of creators, putting something out there, like a Robert Kirkman or Rick Remender or someone like that. If Jim Lee wanted to put out a one shot, he could put out a one shot, things
Yeah.
like that. But it's hard outside of that, maybe with some smaller publishers, but even then, you have a lot who are wary of mature themes and things like that and would rather avoid that because there is some like nudity and there are issues with some printers and things like that and they don't want to get tangled up in that. So it just made more sense to do a Kickstarter for this, which was successfully funded over the summer. And yeah, it's been a great experience. We've already got the stickers in, and that was great. We used Death by Stickers in New Jersey. And
Nice.
it was great. We had a quick turnaround, great price. We got them on sale, but even when they're not on sale, they're still a good price. But yeah, I'm really excited to not just have the comic, but the stickers and some of the other tchotchkes. Uh, at this point, you might be asking, okay, Joe, but like, what's the comic about? And it is a 70s period piece about a male escort who has a high profile client who gets a car to bring him up to his place in the Hudson Valley, and things spiral out of control from there, is really, sort of the story.
How do you get to a point where you go, this is a story I want to tell, and understanding that like this is a one shot, right? Like that you're like,
Yeah.
this is a story I want to tell, and then in the length that I don't have more to say about this kind of like, how do you kind of come up with your ideas and the process of figuring out like what it's going to be if it's ongoing one shots or a perfect fit for an anthology or something?
Yeah, I mean, I try to avoid decompression in storytelling. I know that's kind of counter of what sort of the industry has been doing for quite a while now, but I mean, I cut my teeth on a lot of like shorter stories, anthology stories. I got to do a 10 pager for DC last year. And yeah, and getting these assignments that are shorter form, but I want to make sure people are getting a full story. My philosophy tends to be, okay, you have an idea. What would the one paneler of this look like? Like,
Mhm.
what would, if you were just, because this is all part of storytelling in an art form, like a painting is storytelling. It tells a whole story in just one still image and going from there. So, for example, if you wanted to tell the story of, say, uh, Catwoman leaving Batman at the altar and the marriage not going through, it's like, okay, that's one image you could do of maybe Bruce is standing there alone at the altar and like something of Selena's is behind and maybe he's like holding it or like he's looking at a letter and you see like the shadow of
Mhm.
Catwoman being away and you've told the story. Everyone who looks at that knows like, okay, I got it. Bruce and Selena were going to get married. They're not getting married now. You have him holding the ring, looking at a note, and Selena's shadow as she's moving in the distance. That's the whole story. You don't have to do more than that to convey that story. Okay, now you have a whole page. Maybe you do that in 6 panels. And yeah, and then you tell that story and you show maybe Bruce getting ready to go down the aisle and maybe being a little nervous but he's hopeful and then he gets there and she doesn't show up and or the priest or someone gives him the note and he looks at now you have 10 pages. Now it's a short.
Yeah.
Do the whole build up. And now maybe we have, Catwoman and Batman fighting and stopping a crime together and then they're not going to get they're like, oh well, we're getting married tomorrow and they go their separate way. Like you have to look at storytelling sort of like that for me.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of match the assignment. I never want to go over.
Mhm.
So I realized as I was putting the story together, I'm like, oh, let me think about this. And then I was putting an outline together, and I was like, this feels like a 24-page story. And I broke it down, and I was doing, the page by page, and it worked like that. And I didn't want to add panels that weren't necessary. I didn't
Mhm.
want to add images that didn't lead to anything. Like, I don't like the idea of padding out the story. Like, why is there wasted space? Like, someone's spending money on this. Someone's spending their valuable time
Mhm.
to read it. Like, even if it's free, like I don't want to waste people's time. I don't want to put out comics with panels and dialogue that or captions that I don't think are necessary for the story I want to tell. So, putting it out this way, I feel like there's just the right amount of words, there's just the right amount of, panels and images to get the story across that I want. And that's sort of what I strive for in any, project I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you, when you're writing, like, so sync to the top, do you write with an artist in mind, or how do you kind of come about? Because the artwork in this is fantastic and it really plays
Mhm.
into the storytelling mode. So, do you have a different approach then for different comics on how you're going to get connected with an artist?
Yeah, no, it's always different. Sometimes you have control, sometimes you don't,
Right.
and sometimes it really works out, even when you don't have control. I've been lucky. I haven't really worked on a project with too many artists that have been like, oh, I wish that wasn't the case. I mean, maybe, early on, you're not necessarily going to be putting together the exact kind of story you want, because, you're limited in budget and experience and you don't know, like, the first couple of comics you're putting out, like how to align things in a way where you're like, well, this artist, I understand. Like that comes with time, and then once you figure that out, you don't really have that problem in the same way, I don't think. So for this, I knew Chase Bluestone, like I've known him for a number of years now, and in this instance, he was the first person I thought of because I knew he'd give it 110%, one, and two, he's very good at changing up his style because he did a story in Crisis on Early Earths with Adam McGovern,
Mm,
which looks a lot more Jack Kirby-esque as per Adam's uh sort of notes. And he was working on that, a few years ago before we did this, and it was like, well, gee, I mean, you're doing this, you have a cartoonish style, you can do all these things. So I knew, and his willingness to look at this stuff too helped. So
yep.
I was like, well, I want this to feel like it's inspired by like Bronze Age comics,
Mm,
Gene Colan, and Frank Miller in Ronin specifically, because I think Ronin, it might not be Frank's best written story. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's worth having a conversation about. But I think it's without a doubt the best layouts,
mm,
the most creative, the most kinetic. I think it's hard to find a better example of Frank Miller pushing the medium to its limits than Ronin. So I reread Ronin. I read through Tomb of Dracula comics by Gene Colan when I was putting this together, and I had Chase do the same thing. And I would, sort of reference different kind of layouts and be like, look at it this way, like, and the script was also very much like, this is where I'm thinking, and sort of pulling reference from here and there. So working with someone who I knew was willing to do that helped and really made it easy to put this together in that way. And that's not to say other people wouldn't have done a good or great job on this, but I think Chase was the right person for this project. I think it looks great. I think that shows.
mhm.
I think other people can do it. I don't begrudge artists if they're not willing to do that sort of thing or to, push their style one way or the other to do it. But, this is just a project that really needed that. And I think Chase really delivered it, and we got to be, collaborative on it.
Yeah. So good. I highly recommend checking it out. Joe, I want to respect your time. Is there anything else that we haven't gotten to talk about that you wanted to hit on, touch on, to let the listeners know?
Sure. As of this recording, I believe it is still in the previews on Kickstarter, but I have a 6-page story in the Horror Not Hate anthology. Really excited for that. It's another benefit anthology, but there's I think was it Slow Feet Comics is putting that out. It's got 100 followers already on Kickstarter. The cover is crazy. I highly suggest people check this out, follow it along. It's J.M. Brandt is the guy who's spearheading this. There's some really great talent involved, other than me. Some friends of mine are also in this. Kurt Belcher, who I've worked with before, is in this. Rich Duick has a story in this.
Mm.
David Boer, Lan Pitts, Ben Kahn. Uh, there's a ton of people that I think are really gonna come together and put out a great book. And I cannot stress the cover again. Is
It. I'm looking at it right now. It looks good.
Yeah, so I hope people check that out. I'm very excited by it. I got to write a rather gut-wrenching story for that I'm proud of and I want people to check out. So yes, please consider backing and supporting Horror Not Hate.
Nice. Joe, where can people follow along with you, stay up to date with what you're working on, what you got going on?
Absolutely. I am on both Twitter and Blue Sky at Joe Corallo. So that's JoeCorallo. And on Instagram at Corallo Joe. I keep a lot of posting to a minimum to focus mostly on, what I'm working on, what I'm excited about, and what other people are working on that I'm excited about. So you won't get a lot of you won't get a lot of fluff there either. So, check that out. And also, as you had mentioned before, we've both done things over at Pop Culture Philosophers, Robbie's channel. We've done movie nights there, things like that. I am pretty frequently there. I probably average like every two or three like movie reviews I show up on there. So yeah, he's building up. He's going to be doing a was it Lord of the Rings extended editions? I believe he's doing one through three, and I'm supposed to be on all those. So if you're a Lord of the Rings fan and want to hear my take on all of that, which I'm sure it's mostly going to be people praising the movies and like, yes, I'm not going to be, bashing the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. I'm not going to be there with my hot take of like, well, the animated versions of the movies were better. But but yeah, if you want to see that, check that out too.
There you go, gang. Yeah, we've done a lot. Sadly missed you on Dracula's Daughter.
Yeah, no, I had a D&D game that got rescheduled. So
But
and it's tough when you've got like six adults and some of them have children. And you don't want, like, when you have people with like more than full-time jobs who are working 60 plus hours a week and have kids, and you get the guy that is unattached with no children being like, I'm supposed to be on a movie stream that night. You'd be surprised how unsympathetic they are.
shocking. Uh, but gang, go check it out. You can find Joe and I on that a lot. And where Robbie has to corral us in to not go on our tirades and rants on comics and things and stick to the points that we're trying to make. But
Yeah,
Joe and I have a
absolutely.
tendency to stretch out the show.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you can see us both if you check, was it, we were on a Fulci one together. What was it, from the City of the
Oh
Living Dead, right?
gosh. Yes, that
Yeah.
that
So if you want
Italian.
to see the both of us talk about an Italian horror movie, a Fulci, which is like which is further obscure. Like Argento is like one thing, and then like Fulci is like a whole other thing, and then it
So
gets
yeah, if
crazy
you
from
want to
there.
watch people talk about Italian horror that have a respect for it, that's there. And then me as well, who has never watched Italian horror, I'm there going, what did you guys make me watch?
No, it's great. I mean, you look at that stuff, and if you're not familiar, it's like, so that person's clearly just speaking English, and this person's clearly dubbed over. And that person's dubbed over too. Wait, that person's speaking English. What is happening?
Yeah,
But
it was confusing for sure.
yeah,
Um,
like once you get used to it, like, I mean, look, I love Robbie, but I do feel like he's very like hopeful with this stuff. And I get this idea from him, like, especially on that stream, where it was just like, don't worry. Once you understand, you're gonna give all of these movies 5 stars like I do. And
Dracula's Daughter got a very high rating just because it had a storyline. So,
no, and I love Dracula's Daughter. Like,
yeah.
I think maybe it's the second best Universal monster sequel. I think Bride of Frankenstein's the hands down best sequel, but this is probably right up there, like the second best, like just under Bride of Frankenstein. It's really good.
It was good. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Well,
Yeah.
gang, go like I said, you can go pick up Crisis on Holy Earth right now after you've listened to this or watched this, however you are. Um, keep an eye out for Sync to the Top when you can get that if you did not back the Kickstarter. And gang, horror not hate Kickstarter is about to go live soon. It's launching soon. Go support it. Joe, thank you so much just for taking some time to talk about comics with me.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's been a while.
It has.
We'll
We'll
have to, yeah.
do it a little sooner next time.
Yeah, yeah, no, sometime maybe in the early half of next year or something like that, we'll make it happen again.
Absolutely. So with that being
Awesome.
said, gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.
Yes.